Hello and welcome back to my favorite crafty things for 2020. Today is all about dies. Now, I'll be honest with you, I think I enjoy die cutting with my card making a little bit more than I enjoy stamping, believe it or not. I just think there are so many fun and clever ways to use dies. So in this video, as always, I will show you my favorites. I have them separated into different categories, and I will have links to sources below. Since the list is long, the links will be to categories of dies, and when you click on it, all the thumbnails will pop up. Below each of the thumbnails of the different products will be links to different stores and to videos where I've used those particular products. So any of the examples that I show today will have links to the videos. Also, throughout the video, I will have this teal color piece of cardstock next to my products. The reason is it is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, a typical A2 card size. That way you can kind of get a size reference as I share the products. Okay, let's get started with word dies. I enjoy using word dies because I can quickly add the sentiment on top of what I've created. The word die set that I've probably reached for the most this year is from Altenew. It's the Hello and Hugs die set. The reason I like this is the size is great, the sentiments are great, and you have the word die and the shadow die, so you can use them together or separately. I really like word dies that have the shadow die included, because by having that shadow die cut behind the word, it helps it to stand out on a busy card. I usually do the shadow die cut in white, as you can see here, and it helps that main word stand out. Here are a couple examples that I did. Here I did sending warm hugs, and you can see how that little white outline really helps that hugs to stand out against the busy background. And here I did hello. It's nice to just put this right on top of your focal point, so the sentiment is the focal point of the card also. Next, we have the Memory Box Hello Script die. I will be recommending several hello dies because I feel like that's a great general sentiment, and you can add a stamp sentiment inside or below the die cut that's more specific, like happy birthday, thinking of you, or whatever. I thought this script hello just had a very nice unique feel to it and goes with a variety of styles of cards. Here I did it in a subtle pool on top of my white die cut and black inked background. For something smaller and a little more formal, I have the Birch Press handwritten hello outline. I like this because of the small size and how intricate that hello is. The shadow die is also included. Here's an example where I put this right in the center of an inked heart that I created. So this is one of those die cuts that you can put into the tiniest of spaces. Sometimes I create a card and I don't think where the sentiment's going to go. This is one that you can easily fit into those tight spaces or add on top. For something much bigger, we have the Birch Press Jumbo Lingo Hello die set. I let a friend borrow this, so I don't have it, but it is a much bigger hello die. It is a little more than 4 inches wide, so it fills a card very nicely. Here I did white with black on top because the shadow die is included. And here I used cardstock strips for the shadow portion and then white letters on top. The last hello die I have included is the Stamp Market Outline Hello. This is nice and large. You can see it fits across a 5 1/2 inch card. But what I used it for is on a Slimline card because you can stretch it to make it fill in that space. I did rainbow inlay pieces into each of the letters. So then all you have to do underneath it is stamp another sentiment or add a simple border. Okay, next we have from Altenew the Circled Greeting Hugs. They actually have lots of different words. I think they have hello, hugs, and thanks. Well, I like the hugs because I think that's a wonderful greeting to send. And what's special about this is you could use it as a window on a card. You could do a shaker window behind it. And you can see the word hugs is connected to the circle. Or if you want to, you can cut the word hugs out, as I did on this example here. So I didn't use the circle portion. I like that the die allows you to do both options. And again, there are other words available if hugs isn't your thing. Okay, thanks. I have several thanks included because I make a lot of thanks cards. This is from Sugar Pea Design. They make great products, and I just got this one, and I love the look of it. You can see how detailed the die cuts thanks, and then, of course, the shadow die is included too. I like how the bottom of the T drops down, so you could just tuck a little stamped sentiment strip underneath. Now, one that I've been using a lot for mass producing is from Cat Scrappiness. It's called Thank You. Look how big and bold that is, and the shadow die is included. So I just do inked backgrounds, usually with a gel press, and then add this on top. And I usually use a specialty cardstock for the Thank You. Simple card, and it really stands out. This is definitely my favorite Thank You die of the year, and I'll try to use it in a video. I've used it off screen quite a bit. And a helpful tip for you, whenever you get a new die set or die and you put it into a pocket, if you store them in clear pockets like this, go ahead and die cut the pieces so that when you slide it in the front of the pocket, you'll see right away what the die is. Sometimes it's hard to tell what a die is because it's a backwards image, and it just makes it helpful. Okay, next we have from Concord and Ninth, the All the Thanks die set. This is a great set. They actually have a hello that's similar too. In this die set, you have the hexagon frames that you see at the top left, and you can see what they cut on the top right. Then you have the 3 thanks dies and a little heart. You have the script thanks there in the middle. And then along the bottom, you can see the bold thanks cut as a negative, which you could do on a card. Or you can use the positive pieces, which are cut right above it. To make sure you get the spacing right, just lay the negative piece down and then glue each of the letters for thanks into it, and then remove the negative space, and you have great spacing. The 3rd thanks die actually cuts this faux stitching of the word thanks. This is fun to do repeated along a background. So again, if you're interested in hello instead, they have that version, but I really like this thanks. Another special die from this year that I've used a few times in videos is the Altenew Fancy for You die. Look how beautiful and intricate that die cuts. Now you can leave it as for you and then put a little stamped sentiment underneath it for a specific occasion if you wanted. Or you can cut the word for off and just have the fancy you and then add something underneath it like are awesome or are appreciated or whatever. So think about it. If you have word dies with more than one word, remember you can cut the words apart to get more sentiments. Here I just added the for you in a white glitter cardstock on top of a die cut arrangement. And I just really like how it fits on the card nicely. Okay, for birthday, I'm really liking this new Ellen Hudson Big Scripty Happy Birthday. It has the intricate detailed happy birthday that's nice and large, but also the shadow die for it. I like that this fills across a card horizontally or vertically, and you can cut the words apart again, so you could just have the word happy if you prefer. I am really excited about this die set from Casual Fridays. It has the word hooray and the word celebrate. I die cut them together, but you can take them apart if you prefer. So you can see the die cut words over to the right, but what I like is the negative space that you see in the middle. See how it creates those little shadow cuts underneath the words? That would be fun to put a bold color behind it or maybe some glitter cardstock to really make it stand out. And then that celebrate, I just think that's fantastic. Sadly, this year I've had to make more Get Well cards than I've had to in a long time, and I've been using this La La Land Crafts Get Well Soon. I like how it looks die cut on a circle in the center of a card or a small rectangle, and then you can have any background around it. In a time where encouragement cards are more appreciated than ever, the Simon Says stamp You Matter die really won my heart. You've got the words You Matter and then the shadow die included. I've used this a few times in videos, here as a focal point in the center of a wreath. It die cuts beautifully, and so I use gold specialty cardstock for the words and a white shadow around it. I am crazy about this ink to paper long distance hug die. The reason I like it is it's nice and large. It does this whole saying, but it cuts it in one piece, and it cuts it very easily. So this fills a card very nicely. When I mass produced with this, I did strips of rainbow cardstock in the background and added it on top. Here's an example from a video I did where I made a hexagon card with lots of different hexagon color frames behind it. They do have other sayings in word dies like this if you want to check them out, but this one was definitely my favorite. Another of my most used dies this year is the Simon Says stamp You Are Loved die. Now this die does also come with a second die. It's the shadow for the words. I can't find the shadow, so I just thought I'd show you this one too. That shows you how much I've used it. I've used it so much I've misplaced it. But anyways, you can cut the words "You Are Loved" from black cardstock or a fancy specialty cardstock and put it on a white shadow. Here's an example where I just put it on top of a rainbow. It fills a card nicely and makes for a quick card for anyone. Another I really like is the Simon Says stamp, The World Needs Die Set. So this cuts "The world needs more people like you," and those words cut in one piece, which I think is really handy. Then there is the die to cut the shadow for it also. This is great along with any kind of stamped or die cut border. Another thing you can do with it is put it right in the center of a large shaker box like I did here. So the back of the shaker window is all cardstock scraps. Then I added the die cut to the front of the shaker window. I feel like it's good to have a thinking of you die, and I feel like there's not that many out there. This one is from Little Darling Rubber Stamps, and it is a one-piece die so that you can cut it from your card wherever you want, and the letters will be lined up. Now remember, you can always use the negative space to help line up the individual letters if you want to also. I like that there's a little space between the words, so you can stamp a little sentiment in there also if you want. Next, we have from the Greeting Farm a Love You die. I think they have some other sentiments in this style too. I like the playful look of it, that it's large, and you could just stamp little critters or people like small images and put it around that and have it as a fun arrangement on a card. Another of my really favorite dies from this year is the I Really Miss You die from My Favorite Things. I've used this in a video recently. You can make large shaker cards out of this. You can do fun techniques. Here's how big the U cuts. That's left over from one of my cards. They have a bunch of different sayings in this style, but the I Really Miss You one, this big and bold, I think is super fun. Here's a couple examples. I think it's fun also to make little die cuts or images in that O. And I actually did a video also with one of the other word dies where I did a pull tab behind the word O so the scene changed. And I'll link to that video too. Here we have from Simon Says Stamp and CZ Design with Sympathy. I love all of the word dies from CZ Design. They're very clear to read, a great font that goes with a variety of cards, and the shadow dies are included. Here I used the shadow die to cut out from my background so that the With Sympathy letters fit inside the opening nicely. This is a very classic design that you can use for many years to come. If you're looking for die sets with a mix of sentiments, I like the Doodlebug All Occasion. They actually have a few different sets, but this one covers a lot of occasions. So you have Get Well, For You, Hello, Welcome, and the banner says Congrats. Now, if you are trying to get someone into becoming a card maker and are looking for a gift, this would be a really good option for a stocking stuffer. Another that I recently purchased is from a company in Europe called Create a Smile. They make really high quality stamps and dies, and they have this tiny sentiment set. In it, you have thanks, hey, hooray, best wishes, congrats, and for you, your birthday, hello, welcome, and love. These are all small dies in a beautiful font. What I'm excited about is that they're small, so they're easy to add to a card, and it covers lots of different occasions in one set. There are a few alphabet die sets that I really like this year. One is from Birch Press. These letters are a little bit smaller than 1 inch tall. They're about 3/4 of an inch tall. And what's great is you have the shadow of the letter and then the letter itself. So you could use them together or separately. You can see all the different letters there. This is a really easy way to personalize a card or come up with whatever greeting you want. I know there are crafters out there that don't get word dies and instead get alphabet die sets and just invest in a few of those only. Then they can come up with whatever sentiments they want. Another great one is from Concord and Ninth called All the Letters. These are tall, narrow letters. And in the set, you can see there's a die that says, I just wanted to say. And there are rectangle dies, so you can create like blocks around your letters. There is a number die set also available separately if you wanted that to match. I like these because you can create a word like hello or whatever, and then do a sentiment strip right across the center of the letters since they're so tall. I also like the narrow alphabet set from Honeybee called B Narrow Uppercase Alpha. These are a little thinner, and so you can fit more across a card. And what's nice about this set is the numbers are included in the set, and the price point is great. So if you're looking for a tall, narrow alphabet set, these are two that I really like. Okay, and my last alphabet set recommendation for this year is from Pink Fresh Studio. This is Leah's Ornate Lowercase Die Set. They have a few different ones, and they actually have a stamp set that matches. So each of these letter dies cuts the letter and an outline of the letter to go around it. So you can use them together or separately. Now, I've used these many times in videos. I really like the fancy ornate look of them. It just creates a unique look. And here's an example that I did on a pop-up Slimline card. Okay, our next category is background dies, and if you've watched my videos, you know I love a good background die. So here are my favorites for this year. This one is from W+9, and it's great for layering. So the die set has the large die that cuts this piece, which has lots of details to it. Then it has the die that cuts a smaller piece with an impression around the edge. You can use the dies together or separately, and I've done many examples with this. So here you can see the faux stitching on the big die and the impression around the inside edge of this small die. That impression is really impressive and great. That's kind of funny. And great for a focal point on a card. Here are a few different examples that I've done. I find that this is great when you're making a bunch of cards of the same because this adds so much interest to a card. You can keep the rest simple. But these are some more elaborate examples that I've done using different stamps and die cuts together. Next, we have from Whimsy Stamps, the Quilted Rainbow Inlaid Die. Now this actually is two dies. You have the scallop outside edge that cuts a little bit smaller than a note card, and then the inside die creates a rectangle impression with the faux stitched rainbows in the center. So you can use them together or separately. I like when dies include this so you can get different looks out of it. Another background die that has two dies is from Elizabeth Craft. This is the leaf pattern die. You can see the main background die cuts a piece that's smaller than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but there is also the frame die included that cuts the true card size. I just think this is a beautiful, intricate design, and it looks great even with white on white for adding interest to a simple background. Okay, next we have from Pink Fresh Studio, the Simply Diamonds background die. You can see it cuts a piece that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it covers a note card. Now there are stamps that line up with this, but I like to use it alone. You can even add cardstock strips to form a colorful plaid background, or you can do little stamped images that fit inside each of the windows. Now, I encourage you to check out other background dies that Pink Fresh Studio has because they often have background stamps that line up with it. Here's an example I did where I used this die along with their stamp that has the same pattern but in thin lines. So you can use them together or separately. Okay, a new one from Mama Elephant that I'm really excited about is the Heart Grid die. This cuts a piece that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 with faux piercing around the inside edge for nice detail. Now these hearts you can fill in with different colors. You could do a shaker card. You could put different inked pieces inside. Or you could just use the hearts themselves and use the background die cut just as a holding place so you can make sure you get all the hearts lined up nicely. You can also pop in cute little stamped critters into each of the openings. Mama Elephant has a lot of small images perfect for that. Another that would work for that is from Studio Katia. This is the dotted square frame. Now this one die cuts that thin frame for the outside, and then it also creates that grid pattern in all the little squares. In all of the inside cutting edges are pierced dots, so you have that detail on the frame and on the squares that go inside. I did several cards where I put a heart inside each window, except for the top center window I put a small sentiment. Another that I used for many cards back in the spring is the Studio Katia Half-Tone Lines die. This is a unique die. It is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it cuts individual strips. But you can see the middle strip is big, and then it gets smaller as it goes out to the side. So what I did was cut it from lots of different colors of cardstock, and then I reassembled the pieces in kind of a rainbow across the card. Now you could cut strips like this, but it'd be kind of hard to measure to get that pattern just right, so this was handy. I also like using this to create sentiment strips very quickly of different widths. So I cut it a bunch from white cardstock, and I have a mug with lots of those scraps inside. So whenever I need a sentiment strip, I can find the one of the right width for whatever stamp I'm doing, and I can add it to my card. If you're looking for an intricate or beautiful background die cut, I recommend the Karen Burniston Pattern Plate Flowers die. This cuts 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and you can see there's a little frame around the outside edge. Lots of detail to it, and you can add little gems or tiny die cuts to the pattern. You can also die cut this and then die cut with a large heart, and you would have a beautiful lacy heart to go to the center of your card. You can even cut borders out of this too. I like dies like that have patterns to it that you can cut smaller for different uses. Next, I have the Hello Bluebird Sunshine Scene. So the outside edge of this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it creates a white frame, and then all the pieces to create a cloud and sunshine. This is fun to cut in different colors and inlay together, or you can just use the frame separately with some clouds, maybe add a rainbow to it. If you have little angels, stamps, or unicorns, they're fun to put on here too. I like the idea of scene background dies like this one and hope to see more in the future. Another die that's great for creating scenes is the Pretty Pink Posh Nature Essentials. So this cuts a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch frame with faux stitching in the center. Then everything else that it cuts in the center can be rearranged to create a scene. So you have a tree, grass line, sun rays, a cloud, and some leaves. Perfect for forming a fun scene. I'll be using this in a video very soon. Next, I have a floral background die from Pink and Main. This is the Fancy Floral. It cuts in one piece, and the outer edge is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So there's that outer frame with the floral image in the center. You can cut the frame off if you want. This looks really lovely, either vertical or horizontal. You could do a beautiful inlay technique, or just do an inked background and put this on top. Okay, now if you've watched my videos, you know I love background layering dies. I think it's a great investment because you can use them together or separately. Now here are the 3 dies from Birch Press, the Viola layering dies, separately. You can see how beautiful they are as is. But what is fantastic is when you layer the 3 die cuts on top of each other. Here I did it in 3 shades of peach cardstock and put it on a white note card. Beautiful look. All you need to do is add a sentiment to it. Another thing you can do is cut out a portion of it. So maybe get a flower or circle area of this and layer that onto your card. But I gotta say, I think it's just as beautiful if you cut all the layers from white cardstock and put it on a white note card, as you see I've done in the example here. It adds so much to a simple background. Another layering die set that I really like this year, and you can buy these separately by the way, is the Honeybee Fluttering Hearts. So you have the pierced version and the regular version. Now these are great individually, but when you layer the 2 layers together, it's even better. So here are the 2 die cuts that you get from the 2 different dies. They cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And look at when you layer them together, you have the die cut hearts with the pierced hearts inside of it. Now again, I think this is beautiful with just white cardstock for each layer on a white note card, as I did in the example here. Sometimes those subtle dimensional details in the background are all you need on a simple card design. Another background die I've used a lot this year is the Simon Says Stamp Stitching Panel. Now this cuts 5 by 7. It doesn't cut an outside edge, so you can cut it right in the center of whatever cardstock you have. You can do beautiful stitching patterns on this, and if you've watched my videos, you know I'm a fan of that. But you can also use this as a background, allowing different colors to show through. You can even cut it diagonal on a card since there's no cutting outside edge. Now here's an example. It's kind of hard to see where I use this white on a white background. Can you tell I like doing that? But it gives a little bit of interest to a basic solid white background. If you do like stitching on your cards like I do, I recommend the Waffle Flower Stitchable Pinking Rectangle Die. Now there are many shapes available from Waffle Flower, and you can see the little details on the outer edge. But I like the rectangle because it fits on a card nicely, and you could skip the stitching and just use it as a backdrop. Now these are some that I stitched when I was at the lake this summer. I find stitching on paper very therapeutic. I still have to use these on a card and make a video from them. I'm hoping to do that soon. But this is a great die if you like to do that kind of stitching. It's also easy to divide it up so you can do a pattern or do repeated hearts like I did here. Also from Waffle Flower, we have the piercing panel. This cuts 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then it has tons of tiny little pierced dots. So you can use this to help pop out the pieces from the last die cut that I showed you, or you can just use this as a wonderful background. That little bit of texture makes so much of a difference. Here's an example where I did some inking over a stencil to create this kind of star-like look. Then I used the piercing panel die on top of it. This just kind of steps up that inked background. Very subtle, but definitely worth the time it takes to just run it through the die cut machine once. This brings me to other dies that just create like pinpoint patterns in a background. This is the Memory Box Pinpoint Burst die. It cuts a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece with that kind of sunbeam coming out of the center in little pierced dots. I am a huge fan of dies like this because it quickly adds interest to a simple background, such as the one you see here. The little dots coming out from the center kind of follow the pattern of what I put on the front of the card. Another that I really like this year, and you'll see me use these a lot in 2021, is the Birch Press Pinpoint Radial die. So this cuts 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it has all these concentric circles of little pierced dots. See how that adds so much to just a piece of white cardstock? Here's an example that I did where I did it on light blue cardstock, and then it kind of looks like circles radiating out from the focal point of my card. You could also use this background die and then cut large shapes from it, so the details on those die cuts. Another pierced background die that I like is the Simon Says Stamp Detail Ringlet. This cuts 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and you can see the pierced detail pattern that it adds. I like that this pattern is smaller, it's tighter, so you can have it on a background and have something large over it and still see that pattern. Here's a card where I use this background die. It's kind of hard to see, but I used it on the white in the background. And because this pattern is small, you can still see it with only that much showing around the focal point of our card. Another of the pinpoint background dies that I like is the Memory Box Pinpoint Leaf Plate. This cuts a little bit bigger than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So if you're one of those who likes to make bigger cards, this is a good option for you. Or you can just trim it down to add onto a regular size card. Here you can see the beautiful pinpoint pattern that it creates on your background. I find this background goes great with any of your leaf dies or maybe floral die cuts that you may have. Here you can see how I teamed it up with a heart that has a leaf towards the center. Next up is a die I just got, and I am so excited about it. It's the Pink Fresh Studio Stitches die. This cuts 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but they do have a slimline version also. So if you prefer slimline, they have that. This cuts the outside edge and then does this pattern of faux stitching in the inside. Look how beautiful that is on simple white cardstock. You don't have to add much to it. That background has so much detail to it that it really brings a card to life. Okay, now let's cover other dies. So this includes just general dies, dimensional dies, and more. First, we have the Hero Arts Cloudy Sky Scene. This is a fantastic die set. It has these beautiful cloud dies that have a lot of dimension to them, so you can use them in many different ways on your card. There are also these concentric circles that can be used to create like a sun or a moon along with the clouds. There are so many ways to use these, and here are 2 examples that I did. These are actually cards where the clouds kind of open to create flaps on the card. These are big enough that you can use them for 5x7 cards or even a Slimline card, as you see here. Another from Hero Arts that I like this year is the Window World die. So this you can cut from a card panel, and you can see how the color cardstock behind it shows through. You can make a fun shaker window with this, or just a card window. You can put any kind of inked background behind it, and then team it up with a sentiment like, I'm so glad you're part of this world, or I'm glad I live in this beautiful world with you. Here you can see a simple shaker card version I did with this die cut. Okay, I mentioned in my last video that I feel like this year is the year of rainbows, since it kind of provides a little bit of hope and cheer to us all. I really like the Paper Rose Sweet Rainbow Die Set. Look at all the unique arches that it cuts, so you can do those each from different colors. Then there is the cloud border die, a little bird, and lots of little details that you can add, such as little stars and little hearts. A lot of detail to this, which I think really adds to the fun of the rainbow look. Another rainbow die that I like is the Simon Says Stamp Rainbow Heart. I actually use this so much for mass producing cards that I bought 2 of the hearts with the rainbow in it. So there's an example that you can see on the right. You could just cut this from white cardstock, color the arches, and then assemble it back together on your card, and then add any die cut sentiment on top. Here are a couple thanks cards that I made for nurses back in the spring. I often use heart dies on my cards, and my favorite this year is the Simon Says Stamp Detail Floral Heart. It cuts this nice heart shape, and you can see the detail added to it with that piercing pattern. So it looks lovely on one of those pierced backgrounds that I showed you earlier. Here are a couple examples where I use this die. This time I used it just for white cardstock on one of my gel press backgrounds. And on this next card, I split the heart in half for a fun gatefold card. Now, I've always loved using leaves on my card because they can be used alone or with flowers. One of my favorites this year is from Altenew. It's this Palm Die Set. You can see all the palm dies included in the set, lots of different sizes, and there's a little pot that you can put them in, or you can use them to cover a background or make a simple cluster in the center of your card. I like just these 2 in the center of the card with the sentiment across it and an inked background. Here's one example that I did using the 4U die that I showed you earlier in this video, and I just have 2 of the palm dies right along the background. It's great for creating that focal point. Another leaf die that I've used a lot this year is from Memory Box. I like that the leaves are big and solid, so you can stamp on them or do a technique on them and they'll show up. Or you can just die cut this from white cardstock and put it on an inked background. That's what I did on this card. I did an alcohol ink technique on black cardstock, added the white leaf die cut, and then a hello die cut on top of that. And then finally for leaves, the one die set that you've seen me use the most this year is the Simon Says Stamp Etched Laurel Leaves. There are 2 leaf dies in the set, and they fit together nicely on the center of a card as you see here. Now notice also that on the leaves there are those little etched details that the die creates. Here's one card where I die cut it from white cardstock, and I have it coming out from the top corner of our card, and I added little flower die cuts to it. On this one I used it as a backdrop behind our sentiment. Another die that I've used a lot in videos this year is the Simon Says Stamp Engraved Feather die. Now this cuts the little details once again in the feather, so it's beautiful as a white die cut in the center of maybe an inked or stamped background, and just add a sentiment on top. Here I used it with holographic cardstock on a gel press background with the simple sentiment in the center. Now this next die set is one I bought a few weeks ago, but I have already put to use quite a few times. This is the Memory Box Cherry Blossom Elements. You can see the different pieces it cuts there to the right, small and detailed. Now these can be added to some of the leaf dies that I've shown you already, or you can cut little flowers off this and add it as little accents. I just like to use it to form a little border along a card with a die cut word. I like dies like this that have a smaller price point because they're smaller and can be used to build up something bigger. This brings us to the Hero Arts Cherry Blossom die set. This cuts the branch with a few cherry blossoms on it, but also has individual blossom dies that you can use to layer on the card. I used this in a video several months ago, and it was a very popular die set for hero arts. I think it's because of the detail the dies offer. Look how realistic that looks when you die cut it from color cardstock and add a little ink. This can also be used with many different sentiments. Next, we have the Memory Box Tall Birthday Candle die set. This cuts 2 solid birthday candles and 2 with these little stripes in it, so you can layer them together or use them separately. I've done this from white cardstock and inlaid different colors into the open spaces to create rainbow candles. This die is excellent for a quick birthday card. Okay, next we have the Waffle Flower Additional Circles. Now I've got a lot of circle dies here. Many companies have come out with nesting circle dies. Waffle Flower also came out with additional nesting circle dies. In between the original and the additional sets, you have all these tight, close circle dies that can be used together, pretty much any size you would need. Now I have all mine mixed up here, and I keep them on a hook in my cabinet. If you use circle dies a lot like I do, I encourage you to check out the additional die sets. They give those sizes that are a little bit in between the traditional circle sizes. It also comes in the other basic shapes like rectangles, squares, and so on. So here you can see how I just kind of hook them all on a hook together like that, and I can easily see which size I need to grab. In my favorite crafty things video about organization that I'll be doing later on, I'll talk about those hooks and how that works. Another circle die that I recommend is from Honeybee. This is the Circle Thin Frame die. This is one die and it cuts a bunch of concentric circle frames. I've done a few videos where I show how you cut this from lots of different colors of cardstock and then glue them kind of in a rainbow order. There are many different shapes, but the circle I think is my favorite. And here you can see some examples where I used the circle frame die cuts all together in a rainbow order. It's wonderful if you like to mass produce colorful cards. Next we have the Poppy Stamps Brilliant Rings die set. This has 3 circle dies, and the dies create these little marks on the inside cutting edge, which adds some fun detail. I use circle die cuts on the center of my inked or technique backgrounds quite often, and this provides a little bit of detail to those circles. Another that's great for that is the Reverse Confetti Circle Rays Duo. There are 2 circle dies in this, and it cuts those rays coming from the center. Now you can put a little image in the center as a focal point, or you can cut the edge of it to make it look like rays coming out of a sunshine. You can also layer these together. But I think it's fun to have basic circle dies like this that have little details added as an alternative to using a solid circle die. Here we have the Memory Box Matinee Rectangle die set. This happens to be one of my most used die sets of the year because it cuts these rectangles with a fancy corner and faux stitching on the inside. I use these a lot when I mass produce because it takes a simple design and steps it up a bit. You can even see one of my little dies there is missing, one of the medium-sized ones. Now here are a couple examples. On this one, I had some leftover flower images that I just arranged onto a smaller die cut and used one of my pinpoint backgrounds. Here I stamped some rainbows with a sentiment underneath. I think this is a nice alternative to a basic rectangle die. Here's another that is the same. It's the Spellbinders Essential Rectangle die set. So there are dies in here that cut rectangles and then slightly smaller dies that cut a row of dots. So you can stitch through those little dots or holes, or you can leave them open as I did on this die cut example here. So instead of having a plain rectangle on the center of your card, you can have these little dots. Now you can use the dots separately too. So you could have a note card like this with little dots around the outside of the card. I like that you can use these together or separate, and here's an example where I did a small rectangle with the dots on the inside as a backdrop for a leaf die cut. Okay, next up we have the Your Next Stamp Stitched Rectangle Frame die set. Now you can cut each of these rectangles apart, but I've kept them together, and they cut the 4 different size rectangle pieces that you see on the right. The largest one fits nicely on the center of a note card. And what's nice about these frames is they have double stitching in the inside, and the frames aren't too thin. So these are fantastic for creating the walls on a shaker card because you can still cut foam that will fit behind it. The frames aren't too small for that. It's also just a nice finishing touch on a basic card design. If you watch my videos, you know I really like to add sentiment strips to my cards. The Altenew featured sentiments die are great for this because they create sentiment strips in a variety of sizes with little rounded corners, which gives it a nice finished touch. I have a little bowl with a bunch of these pre-die cut from white cardstock so I can grab whatever size I need for a particular sentiment. Here's a card example that I did using these dies, and you can see how nice that rounded corner is. This brings us to the Mama Elephant Quick Stripes die set. There are 4 dies in here. Each cuts thin strips, and it cuts multiple of that size. This is great to cut a bunch ahead of time from white cardstock, and you can use them for sentiments. You can see how each one cuts bigger stripes. Now you can also use them to create stripes on a background. I like that this makes it really easy and you don't have to measure things out. Here's an example where I created a stripe background from gray cardstock on white. But you can also use it for sentiment strips or for creating a rainbow background of multiple colors of cardstock scraps. Now, if you like making slimline cards, I recommend the Sunny Studio Slimline Scallop Frame Die Set. Slimline cards are the bigger, longer size that are about 8.5 by 3.5 inches or a little bit bigger. Now, my friend is borrowing this die set, but it cuts that scallop rectangle with the little dots in it, the rectangle inside of it, and all of the different words that you see there. You definitely can use this on non-slimline cards like I did in this example. You can see the white scallop there around the outside edge and the thank you die cut in the center. This has a lot of basics and would be great for a gift also. Layering dies. I also like layering dies that are elements for the center of my card. My favorites this year include the coral layering dies, the 3 dies that you see here, and look how beautiful they are layered together. You can use these to create ornaments during the holidays or use them behind any sentiment all year round. Here's an example I did where I used these layering dies in the center of a gatefold card. One of the reasons I like layering dies so much is that it adds so much detail to a very simple card design. Another layering die set I used a lot this year is the Birch Press Floral Heart Layer Die Set. There are the 3 dies that you see on the left, beautiful each individually, but layered they add so much detail. This is a fun die set to use from colored scraps that you have. Each card will look a little bit different by layering different colors. Now in this example here, I actually used the die cuts to do inking, so I used them as stencils. So this is a 1-layer card with inking over it. Another layering die set with a great price point is the Spellbinders Kaleidoscope Tile Die Set. There are the 3 square dies that you see, which fit nicely kind of arranged in a tile pattern on the front of an A2 card. Or you can layer the 3 together and just put it front and center on your card with the sentiment on top. You can even turn it so it looks like a diamond. Lila and I are currently making a bunch of Christmas gift tags that are these layering dies in red, gold, and silver. And we'll just write the names on the back. Layering dies that create realistic flowers have become very popular this year. My favorite is the Altenew Jumbo Garden Picks die set. You get all of the dies you see here. And what I like is that all of the dies that are connected are to be cut from the same color. So you don't have a bunch of individual dies to deal with. So all of these you cut from the same color, all of the next one you cut from the same color, and it allows you to layer easily. It comes with this guide that makes it very simple to know what shade of a color to cut each of the die sets with. I like this particular die set because it cuts the 4 different types of flowers and 2 different types of leaves and a little flower cluster. All of them are layered with lots of details, so you can use them together or separately. So I feel like it's a lot of bang for your buck. Here's an example card that I did with just some of the layering die cuts that are included in that set. My video shows the others too, but you can see you get really large images from this set. If you like layering floral dies, I recommend checking out the Altenew Craft a Flower series. These are layering flower dies that they come out with each month. My favorite of all the ones they've come out with so far is the Craft a Flower Poppy. I just got this and I can't wait to use it. From the layering guide that comes with it, you can see how realistic those poppies are. There's something special about a poppy flower. I know that they're not easy to grow, which I think makes them so special and strong. So I think they're wonderful to use on cards. I'll be sharing in a video soon about how to create pop-up easel cards. This die set from Poppy Stamps is so wonderful for making pop-up easel cards easily. It includes a die to cut the card base for the pop-up easel. It also has this beautiful, intricate floral frame die, which you can see fits nicely on the front of a traditional card if you prefer. And it has the die that cuts the shadow for that. Then it has 3 little frame dies with some leaves on the edge. These can also be used individually. That's one of the things I liked about this die set. It has so many things that can be used for the easel card or separately. They also have some fun pop-up easel cards that are like birdhouses and some Christmas scenes if you're interested in that too. But this one I thought could be used year-round. My video will be coming soon using this die set, but check this out. This is an example from their website, and look how beautiful it is. You can see how the easel card stands up and how you can use all the different dies together or separately. Such beautiful detail to it. Another functional die set that I recommend this year is the Fawn Magic Iris die set. Now it looks a little funny here, but you can use these dies to create this magic iris card that is so much fun to make. I've done a video showing how to assemble it, so I encourage you to check it out. But here's an example. When you turn that tab, the center opens up, and there are many creative ways to use this. I think this is one of the best designed functional die sets of the year. Another that I like and recently got and I'm excited to use is a My Favorite Things Outside the Box. If you've seen my videos, you know I like to create dimensional shadow box cards, and this one makes it very easy. Now I haven't used it yet for video, but I plan to soon. And here is an image that I got from My Favorite Things website. So this flattens and fits into an envelope, and when you open it, it pops up with that arched background, and you can put layers of little critters or images to create a fun scene. So stay tuned, I'll be using this in a video soon. Okay, we're close to the end. I know that many people who make cards like to also make their own envelopes, so you can use any kind of pattern papers you have or more. I recommend the Trinity Stamps Slimline Envelope Builder if you make slimline cards. It includes this rectangle frame, which is 8.5 by 3.5 with the scallop inside. It also includes hello and friend, along with the shadow dies, which I think is great, as you know. Then it includes the dies to create a few different styles of slimline envelopes using whatever paper you have. I haven't used the envelope dies themselves in a video, but I plan to soon, so you can see how they work. But here you can see the Hello Friend and how nicely they fit across a slimline card. They also fit great on a traditional card size. And last but not least, we have the Simon Says Stamp envelope die. I know some people like to use the punch board that creates envelopes. However, I find this so much easier for me, and I can use this with my regular die cut machine and whatever cardstock I have. This allows me to make custom envelopes for my basic A2 cards. So I've done a video showing lots of creative ways to use it, so be sure to check that out. But if you want to make a special envelope for your card, this is a die set to consider. All right, there you have my favorite dies from this year. Sorry it was a long video. I thought this would be shorter than the stamps, but it wasn't. If you are interested in the products I talk about, I link each category, which is words, background, and general, in the links below. When you click the link to those categories, all the thumbnails will pop up with the icons for shopping and for the videos below. You can also go to my blog, which I encourage you to do because everything is over there, including a great giveaway for some dies. Thank you for watching. Be sure to check out my other favorite crafty things here in the middle. I appreciate you taking this time. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.